Got disconnected. All right, we're back. Here. So this one is good. This one is also good. Yeah. And then, and then. So much better. And here. Much better. Oh, Mr. Camilo. Hello. Enjoy. Whenever you have a question, shoot. I will try to answer along the way with this live session that we're starting tonight. So, people, welcome back to the Speak Up Club's live sessions that we make every Friday at 7 ish, Guayaquil time. I just find out that I haven't updated. There you go. We're good now. Much better. So, did I? Oh no, I skipped one. This is the one. It's just that it was on the back. Didn't see it. All right, much better. Good. So, welcome people from the internet. Welcome to one of our live sessions. As you know, before we begin, we always have this disclaimer regarding the whole purpose of what we do here. And as you know, this is a service that we are offering for all those people that have been or are students of ours, and to whom we have imparted many of the techniques that we apply ourselves in many different aspects of our performance when it comes to language. Using language to communicate any type of idea, concept, etc., and using this or applying these techniques and these gimmicks and other different strategies in situations that are, needless to say, uncomfortable, as having to speak live to who how many who knows how many people is going to end up watching this video. And so of course it's a situation that is, takes you completely out of your comfort zone. And we all know that as you have to do it as an ESL, acquiring English as a second language, it is tough. It's difficult. It's cumbersome. So of course, we use moments like this to, with examples, help all people that are interested in learning how to make this better, right? And at the same time, we develop topics that we use in our own private sessions. Uh, of course, exploring different ideas that we have in order to make our audience, the public that work with us, think. You know, that's the whole purpose of this. The name of this channel is A-létheia. And A-létheia, as you know, is in Greek, is the truth. And it so happens that the truth, as it is difficult. It is difficult to grasp in many different reasons, many different ways. And to that, we have to add what we are going to be speaking about tonight. So, without further ado, let's begin. Tonight's topic is called generational worldview versus Descartes Cogito. And, there has to be some sort of context to this particular construction because, I mean, first of all, what do I mean by generational worldview? Um, as you know, every generation has a different position to see life. It has been proven with how in society people generally know of the big differences that are between the main generations that are active in today's world. We have the boomers, we have the X's, we have the millennials, and now the generation C's, right? and all of them add something to the phrase, add something to say to the public discourse, and it's need to be discussed when we are speaking about the way humans think generally, which is one of those topics that are really interesting for us to discuss about. So anyway, um, when I the first time I really thought about the topic of cogito, I was actually I came across the concept because I was working on research of a topic that was completely apparently unrelated, and to work on my dissertation for before I graduated from university. And I came from, oh, we have a problem with with Instagram that we don't have battery. Can you help me with the cable, please? Let's see. Oof, that's an issue because that's gonna change the setting of a camera on Instagram. But let's see. Pass it this way. Thank you. See that is plugged properly over there. It's not. Aha. Thank you. It's working. Okay. I'm sorry. So again, I came across a video from a Big Thing, this company that makes really interesting documentaries online, and it was about the philosopher, thinker, scientist Daniel Bennett. He was referring to a situation that I remember hearing back in university discussing about this, but as the car was not really my thing back then. I did not really pay too much attention. I was not the best of students in reality. Anyway, I was the type of students that was, kind of like focused in one thing only and not the whole thing as I was supposed to. So back then, doing this research, only one thing type of research, I got across this video, which Bennett was speaking about how when he heard the first time that he heard, sorry, no, he read about cogitoergosum, I think, therefore I am. He thought it was genius for how good it was, and at the same time how failed it was. And he started speaking about the whole idea of how the concept in itself is a failed concept, and it struck me as weird to say that one of the most important concepts that a philosopher is known for is actually a failed one in itself. It gets to be one of those points that people normally have to argue about because you cannot simply just take it and say like, yeah, I mean, like, whatever make this person known, be known, is at the same time something that is not necessarily, you know that at the end is kind of like worthless if you put it to that in the way it was. To which, of course, we need to compare the position that Bennett had, and many people that supports Bennett's position, to what the intention of the author, Descartes, had when he developed this idea of the cogito. So we're speaking about cogito ergo sum as the method that Descartes developed to buy a general doubt to everything, instauring a possibility of trying to assess how we humans get to learn things. That was his whole purpose, right? How humans get to learn things, how we get to get things stuff in our heads. If there is a possibility that we actually learn anything, how is it that we do it? That was his interest. And at his time, uh, truth as it is was not really truth when it comes to knowledge. I mean, you could go to and pay lots of money to educators to be taught stuff that was not really truth. What I mean by this is, at the same time, it was being taught things as philosophy, but then religion as science and as facts. And we all know that It's not the same. I mean, religion has a particular side dedicated to the individual spiritual development, but science is something totally different. And when it happens that you have the two as the same thing, well, you got quite a lot of conflicted ideas in general. So Descartes felt that it was not really good to leave things be that way. So by installing this method of doubting everything, putting everything to doubt, he considered that the only thing that you cannot doubt is the fact that you are the one doubting, and doubting is a form of thinking. So of course, you think obviously you are supposed to be. If you can doubt that everything is, that everything people tell you is, well, if you doubt about everything, the only thing that you cannot doubt is the fact that you are doubting. So that method worked perfectly for that time. But we cannot really take it that to the word today, as we then begin to consider that it is kind of like a ridicule, the fact that we have to doubt everything. I mean, there are things that are undoubtable, and in itself that method will be rendered useless if you keep applying it to everything. I mean, that was good back then, but it didn't age well, if you want to say it that way. Not necessarily for what I think. It has a justification, and you cannot really consider this a failed thing because it simply just does not apply to what we consider reality is supposed to be today. And if you think about what this conclusion I just got to, isn't that connected to what the title of this video is all about? You know, generational uh, worldview. Every generation has a different worldview, has a different way of seeing the world. Why is that? Well, because reality is different for every generation. Think about the reality in which the car was living uh, back in the 16s, 17s, like 1700s. And this is too old. So things began to be known worldwide, and what I mean by worldwide is mostly the Western world. And for those people that were highly educated, but not many people actually had that option. John, hello, John. Welcome. Whenever you have a question, get ready to shoot. So, but back then, that was again something that it was needed because people had a combination of paradigms that made reality weird, made reality capable of hiding stuff that was not necessarily being hidden and showing stuff that was not necessarily being shown as reality. As, for example, things that made different scientific concepts later on be accepted by general public, like things that made people be resistant to that scientific knowledge or progress, if you want to see it like that way, that was needed just before the industrial revolution. um, Back then people needed to start thinking in a different form of understanding knowledge, and that was basically the main function that the Descartes Cogito came to do, right? But from it, we can see that there's too much in reality to think about that idea. As Bennett said, okay, one of the failure things that is argumented against the Cogito is the fact that you say um, reality as the way that we see it, it is seen from the perspective of an individual that is inside your head and is taking decisions behind some sort of panel control, right? Bennett says, no, that's not true. I mean, you see reality from a perspective of you as an integral being that has eyes, brain, body, and all work in unison to make you understand the experience of life. Okay, great. Man, it is raining, Joanna. So you get to finally join us for one of these sessions live. Awesome. Well, I'll be waiting. I will looking forward to one of your comments later on. So again, as I was saying before, Bennett's totally right. We are people that think with everything, not just simply our eyes. We think with from kinesthetic perspective, from um, uh, let's say our flavors, our smells, um, everything that we see, everything we sense, and everything that we experiment at the very end. But you see, there is where generations begin to differ in the way they perceive reality because those senses can be stimuli. Yeah, they can be, let's say, pushed in by stimulation, different stimulation, to one way or another, depending on what is available for this reality that these people are living. As for example, we have, let's say, if you had been alive at the time of slavery, you could at the time probably consider that slavery was not supposed to be a bad thing, but simply just a reality. We we all were born in the time in which slavery was not, is not considered a thing. It is something that is supposed to have been abolished years ago. And whenever we hear that there's someone that is supposed to be a slave, we don't accept it. We deny it. We reject it. We all condemn that, right? That doesn't really mean that there are no slaves today. It's one situation that happens in reality. One thing is that we reject the idea of slavery, and the other thing is that slavery doesn't happen. The fact that we reject it, generally as human beings, make it be something that it's not supposed to be widely known. It still happens, but in certain places, in certain circumstances, right? But still happens, and you can hear about this from every now and then. When things like sweatshops are reported, you can hear it as, for example, well, that was the case of a famous UFC fighter, Ngannou, that won the championship of heavyweight and seemed to be unbeatable. Of course, Dana White kicked him out because he couldn't agree with the last payment that he was demanding for the last fight. Everybody wanted to see that fight between Ngannou and Jones. But you see, he outgrew his slave mentality, and he was starting to ask a proper salary for the type of show he was about to, put out there for the great UFC audience. And of course, they didn't agree to terms. We got to know about this case because, of course, this guy was famous. But if this guy had not become the beast that everybody know him for as a UFC champion, we probably would have never known of places like the place that he worked uh, when he was a kid, all the way until he had the chance of leaving that place. That place still exists, so you can say that slaves still exist. That is just simply one example. Okay, you can see that if we have, for example, baby boomers, generation that younger generations tend to normally speak a lot of crap about. Is a generation that everybody know have difficulty to dealing with, let's say, technology and social changes. Okay, so in that generation, it is sort of understandable the fact that maybe racism exists because for them, when they were born, racism was justified according to their ideology that they thought was supposed to be the norm. Generations later, you had changes, and those changes start to define how our parents, for example, they saw their reality. And you can say that, for example, for me being born when I was born, I am a barely Generation X and barely millennial. My parents were born in the late 50s to early 60s. So that generation per se, I know so many people from that generation, my parents' age, that tend to have more or less the same attitude of be super upfront and at the same time be so close-minded. I don't know why, upfront and close-minded at the same time. For them, it is pretty normal that science is a fact and everybody accepts facts like that. However, you need to have a religion. It's not like it's optional. No, for them, you need to have a religion. Okay, so that is in itself is strange. And I'm not saying that people that have faiths or profess religions cannot have religions. I'm just saying that in itself the fact that you put it like a mandatory thing is weird. It is strange because simply just with Christianity, we know that Christianity and science, modern science, clash constantly in many different aspects. The same will happen with every other type of religion that has a creationist theory. Anyway, we are speaking about ideology, of course, one of the topics that we tend to speak about a lot here in this area of discussion. We are speaking about the ideology that is inherent with, um, let's say, the reality that is reported about in every generation. And when we're speaking about reported, of course, in the past, all reports needed to be well, written. We only depended basically on books. If there were not books about any particular subject, so we would be totally ignorant about what happened. And if we were ignorant about them, it is as if they never happened. That's the reason why discoveries tend to be really important, but sometimes people don't really pay attention to them. Anyway, on this matter, we have the idea that um, if a generation was exposed to a particular type of technology that dictated or determined or altered the way people thought about the world, and then the following generation had a complete different type of technology or a technology that will do the opposite of that, these two generations will definitely have issues, issues of how they will see reality. Let's say I got, if I have to compare boomers, and I'm being obviously extremely generalistic, but I'm speaking obviously regarding my own experiences. I should. If I have to speak about boomers and how the boomers are seen by the world as so obtuse or um, uh, technologically negligent, and at the same time um, a little bit out of touch with the economic reality of the world, etc., etc. You can say that their values were nonetheless really strong in ways that allow them to survive many different conflicts, many different issues that obviously they had to live because of the years that they were alive. Among them, some of them even had to face wars, which is something that you cannot really claim so much about younger generations. I, for instance, have never really lived a war. I know that wars have happened throughout my lifetime, but pretty far away from where I was. So of course, I have seen some armed conflicts as it was Caracasos. I was there, but I mean, it's not the same. It's not the same as a war. Um, and as I speak about these older generations and people that actually went through gruesome periods of life like that, and the implications that going through or living in a time of work means, uh, you can say that their mindset was strong enough to have survived basically all those years and even being today doing and thriving as they do. You got the generation of my parents, which happened to be a generation so full of one particular thing: divorces. It was like the most popular thing to do, getting divorced. And of course, as we know, these people were the ones that remarried and remarried and remarried so many times. And for that reason, you got families that are so expanded on how they use their last names. So many stepbrothers, so many officially. The step siblings actually have a lot to say about how you see reality. Then you can say that this generation was tough, yes, but a little lax on their kids. And the reason why they were a little lax on their kids, at least it was in Latin America, was because of one particular thing that every person that is about my age will know about. Our parents always wanted to give us something that they did not have, right? So it was always like that. It didn't really matter what type of economic class your family was. You still heard this. It was the ideologic instance that families were supposed to, provide kids with better conditions, right, all the time. So much that they even taught us. They said that you cannot have kids too young because then you will not be able to give your kids all the different conditions to make their lives better. So I grew up with that ideology too, and like myself, many people, and many people of my generation actually married really late in life, a lot. And again, I'm being generalistic here, but by the age I am, I'm 43 years old. You can actually compare with what you know, and you know that what I'm speaking about is not totally far from from true or from facts. Um, I'm speaking about how is it that people got to consider that if you were an early parent, that was actually something that would limit your life conditions. And of course, a lot of people my age had early children, and they were the examples that we use by saying like, no, I don't think I'm gonna have kids just now. I think I'm gonna wait a little bit longer, a little bit later. Lots of people actually had that, and that they gave us that example. They had the same ideology that the parents had about try to give your kids something better, right? But by doing that, you or this generation became a little bit weird on how they started addressing this issue of making things better. One of the things was, as me and my wife, we always speak about this. This generation, me being part of it, are not really that mature. We are not really that mature. We are people that, despite the fact that we have 10 decades and more being alive, we enjoy science fiction, for example, so much. We discuss and argue about, let's say, Star Wars. We get mad with our friends because of game results, etc., etc., etc. We are really immature in many different reasons, and that immaturity, it is expressed in the way we deal with our children. We consider that given them better conditions is actually defending them from the evils of life. And one of those evils is, for example, teachers. Many, I've seen that myself because I'm a teacher. Many parents of this generation, my age, of course, whenever they are speaking about their kids, they speak about their kids as if they were lawyers, to which you can compare definitely how your parents were speaking about you in front of the teacher. And the attitude is totally different, completely different. Our parents were telling the teachers, hey, if you need to beat him physically so he behaves, do it. I give you my permission. That was accepted back then because using violence was not really something supposedly bad per se. It was supposed to be used for education to teach people. There were sayings that actually even glorified using violence when teaching. It's that obviously we know that wasn't true. You did not really need violence. Although sometimes you can argue that maybe a little bit of it can be, let's say, contingent as a contingent action. I don't know. Everyone will know what's better. At the same time, you have to judge the world and the reality that you're living according to what your conditions are, and that's important. We always say that. We're not preaching any position, anyways. Going back to what we're saying, we have the idea that our parents were being so tough to us that we said that our parents were wrong. Therefore, we are going to be doing the complete opposite. That's again, just getting to that conclusion is a sign of your immaturity, right? The fact that you are going to defend your kids no matter what in front of the teacher by saying, my kid is the most responsible kid ever. He never insults anyone. He is very empathetic, and he is, I don't know, very smart. He will never fail. He always studies, etc., 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 etc. I'm not laughing at my students. I'm just speaking about what is reality, and the reality of today is that that situation happens because of how parents somehow project the let's say the different remorses they had when they were educated towards what the kids are facing now. And I'm not saying that parents should not be protective of their kids. Actually, they should, definitely should. At the same time, being protective also means to be aware of what's more important depending on the fact of the situation when it comes to a decision for education. As, for example, discipline requires some type of sacrifice, be it time, be it effort, etc., etc. If the intention of the teacher at asking your kid to do something is regarding the discipline that this kid is supposed to develop, well, you as a parent trying to defend your kid by saying, no, that is unfair, it's too much work, you're not really helping. And that is a generation different. So if you have that, isn't that possible that the next generation, the kids, are going to be kids that will have that particularity of trying to face the world from the perspective of everyone is against me. My dad is always telling me this. I need to be protected all the time. So much I cannot take the bus on my own. This is the generation of kids that don't know how to use public transport on their own. At least not the ones that are having a really good life. Of course, we all know if you are living in a slum, if you're living in the general with the general public, people that earn just the basic. Of course, you have to learn reality in the tough manner because that's what happens to people that like us, that we don't have much. But if you're living the good life, the capacity of the life capacity that the lifestyle that your parents are capable to afford for you as a kid, which is having your own house, or at least having a place that at least your family, alone your family lives there. Um, having a way to secure some type of transport for your own family too, maybe private education, etc. If you have those conditions, well, of course, you're blessed by many different things that a lot of people don't have. But then there is where you see this, that overprotectiveness that parents are having lately so often everywhere. It's not just a Latin American situation. This happens everywhere. This generation, of course, is growing up to become seriously sensitive with the world, but at the same time be overly exposed to information because this generation has way too much information. That information that we, for example, my generation had. I was listening to this comedian that made it really fun when he put the differentiation between generations by saying Generation X had it perfect with just the access to 200 channels. 200 channels was enough. You didn't need more. And that was like a standard for cable television of people my generation. Today, you don't need a quantity of channels. You don't need channels. You got so much that you can watch non-stop media all day, all day long. So of course, students of us today have to sit in a classroom and have to take the option between watching what the teacher is trying to do at the board, listening and trying to copy, or on his phone listening to non-stop media of any kind. Well, the temptation is quite high on the media. That's the reason why you have phone addiction. It is a situation that is worse for younger generations than what it is for generations like myself. It's stupid of people like my age trying to criticize when a kid suffers from this type of uh, vice, because it's a vice. It is totally understandable. For them, it is normal. For generation Z, it's definitely normal that you are trying to control the world. That's why the most important media is not even TV, it's not cinema, is video games. We all know that for Generation Z, video games is the most important media that you have access to as your own. Whereas for my generation, it was cinema, and later on, it became video clips. But it's kind of stuck there. We obviously had access to video games, but not as much as you did Generation Z, because we had to grow up. We were forced to grow up, going to university, going to work, etc., etc. We had to use our PlayStations just till we turned 20, 21, and that was it. Of course, for those people that had it better, they could, extend the use of PlayStation a little bit longer. But you cannot really make any generation X like myself compete with the capability of know-how that a generation Z has in everything related to video games. Why is that? Why is that the generation Z will see the world from the perspective of what they consume more than us that had a different type of media of consumption? Well, that's part of ideology. That's how you consume ideology. Ideology is not there for you to simply just see it when it happens. Like, hey, ideology is happening. It's happening now. We are going through an ideological situation. No, no. Ideology is there in every little minimum aspect of reality. As long as it is part of your day to day, as long as you need to spend time doing it, you are immersed in a type of ideology. And that type of ideology will dictate what is supposed to be good, what is supposed to be decent, what's supposed to be cheap, what's supposed to be ugly, what's supposed to be terrible, and what's supposed to be the worst thing ever. Your ideology is basically what controls your morals. So obviously, if ideology changes between generations, Worldview will change too. Politics will change too. So maybe my generation is struggling with the changes that we see in society today, because a lot of changes are happening that we, many people in my generation, don't like. And we need to consider the reason that why is it that there is such, let's say, like the barriers between generations are becoming such visible things. Like you can easily tell three things what you don't like of the boomer generation, three things you don't like the X generation, three things you don't like the millennial generation, and so on and so forth. And there is no unity. And as it is, there is no unity. You can tell that whomever wants to take advantage of this will do so. And I'm speaking about politics, of course. Whomever convinces one generation to become more active, politically speaking, well, is gonna have the chance of actually, using that thing that has been used, overused too much lately, that is populism, to, make policy happen. And we all know what happens with policy, that it is promoted by populism. It's simply just not well thought of. It's not thought through. It's not 100% effective. Every generation has a particularity. It has something to add to reality, because every generation had, as obviously the experience that older generations have over the others, accumulate to situations that will help filter reaction. I don't know if I will have to say that this is a sad thing. Like sadly, I will say that technology today is advancing at such a pace that sometimes it is hard to cope with, and that makes people react negatively between changes and changes. Instead, I would prefer to say that we should consider everything from the perspective of how things have happened. We have to see everything that we see today, and at the same time look in our hindsight, like seeing what things used to be, how things used to happen, how things went through, and how the experience of all that is supposed to help us filter what is happening today. At the same time, there should be more trust from both generations, because both generations, no, I say both polarities, younger generations with older generations, in terms of trying to find ways to get some type of consensus about specifically how we perceive reality. And what I mean by this is the push, as Ian McIlcraig says, the push towards a left-oriented brain, a left hemisphere-oriented way of seeing life, in the way in which the left hemisphere of a brain it is supposed to work, in which everything is focused on concepts, on lifeless ideas, on um, conclusions are related to logicisms, but not necessarily reality, not necessarily the palpable thing that you can see. Well, we are going to become less. We're gonna have less empathy for our neighbor, and we are gonna become more the type of fascist that reality seems to be portraying constantly in different forms. We got in the boomers the Nazis and the fascistas in Italy, but in every generation you have groups similar to those. Today, we got apparently the leftist side of politics that are trying to become that way, extreme enough to say that if you don't do, or as they say, if you don't use the ways of a language that they're proposing, well, you are supposed to be canceled or shunned from society. This is a situation that I came across these days that is happening in Canada. I'm not inventing this. you know, was some teacher that at a school that made a public comment of Muslim kids, Muslim students, that they reserved the right to be part of the Pride Month. I mean, the Pride Month is a month for basically people that consider themselves woke. And that is totally understandable because, I mean, you're free to have the ideology that you want to, as Muslim people are supposed to have the ideology that they want to. And Muslim kids wanted to, be left out of these celebrations as they don't necessarily commune with this ideology, the woke ideology. The comments from this teacher were that these people are, if they don't commute, if they don't accept, if they don't participate with them, with the rest of their school classmates, they better simply just quit coming to school altogether. They just simply should just leave the country. That was the conclusion that this teacher had. Because they said that this is a situation in which all Canadians are supposed to be involved with. I think it's extreme, and I don't think I am the only person that think that this is extreme. And this is a situation that's happening everywhere, at least in the Western world. There's a pressure, a social pressure towards accepting ways. And we all know that is motivated to how obviously younger generations are seeing things. And they see that changes are necessary. And that is plausible, that is totally acceptable. But at the same time, it's disingenuous to say that that is the only way in which you have to see reality. You cannot really see reality simply by the perspective of your own way of seeing the world, as you've seen the world is lack of lots of experience that modulate how you see the world. That's why you use the experience that your parents have and their grandparents, uh, your grandparents have. All those generations are not enemies or predators to each other. They're simply just people that have been here before and have something to add. People that will have it difficult to put up with things if you force them to actually accept them the way that you are forcing them to accept. I think there should be an open communication that will allow those differences between generations to simply just eliminate. So that was kind of like the spirit behind uh, Descartes' positioning of the cogito, as he simply just wanted to say that, yeah, you need to doubt everything, but you can't doubt yourself. You need to doubt everything if you really want to make sure that you are using or applying the right methodology of understanding how things are. But you cannot doubt yourself because you simply, that is the main principal way in which you perceive the world. You are you. You cannot really doubt yourself. That mm, denying of applying the method to their own first persona, that is supposedly the point in which is criticizable. That is it conveys with the spirit of what I was speaking about before. Every generation has a different cogito. Every generation has a different way of being. Every generation has to go through that question. I think, therefore I am. I think as what my reality is telling me that I should, what I should be thinking of, and at the same time, every generation should consider the limitations of the I think, because the world is not just populated by me, it's populated by other people that have been here before, and they have a lot to say about this reality, about this world. I cannot simply just dismiss it as if it is not important. And I will need to understand how to not dismiss what the younger generations have to add too, because obviously there is value in the new way, the fresh way of seeing life. There is value in everything. we should be capable of understanding how we see this value. With this, we get the conclusion of tonight's club session. In our live session of, again, generational worldview versus Descartes Cogito. And obviously, we're not leaving without offering the option for all the people that remain live to send us a question in the chat or in the comment section for both here in live in our YouTube or in our Instagram channel. We will appreciate it, of course, if you send any comment. And obviously, remember that uh, again, we having our services in A-létheia as a language consulting agency for all those people that are in the process of mastering their language, be it as it may, English, Spanish, English to Spanish, or Spanish to English. If you're struggling in that process and you require any type of help, we're here to help you. Leave us a comment and we will try to contact you in the way that you want us to, of course. Um, we have different services. One is obviously this area that is the Speak Up Club. You guys just saw one of the topics that we developed during one of our sessions at the Speak Up Club. And we got different days, but for now we having Wednesdays and Saturdays. But we got different days waiting on people's confirming. So please contact us and let's see what we can do for you. Of course, we have other services regarding the same idea of helping people with the English to Spanish or Spanish to English process. And with that further ado, if there are no comments, I was waiting, but I don't think that I have any. I will check them later on with the video in YouTube. For the people in YouTube, thank you for attending. Thank you for your patience and thank you for your interest. That's always awesome. The same as for our people in Instagram. Thank you for being here all the way. As we know that live sessions on Instagram this long normally difficult, difficult to be attended throughout. All right. So anyway, thank you, people, and obviously be attentive to any announcements for our next live next Friday, same time ish. We always try to make it at 7, but you know we are not masters yet. We're trying. We're trying. Well, people, thank you. Be seeing you, and I wish you the best. All right, Instagram people. Yes, yes. All right, please help me here. And